Warning, the video you're about to see is filled with so many lies you might feel like you've lost touch with reality. What is truth? Can truth be determined? Yes, it can. This bitch is a liar, and I'm about to prove it.
So I do apologize. This section of my life is a big blur, especially because of the r/fat people hate drama stuff that I dealt with. Not even drama. That was traumatic. Which, have you ever heard of that subreddit?
No, I have not. The ban of fat people hate on June 10th, 2015 was one of the most significant moderation events in Reddit's history. It is actually one of the most significant moderation events in the internet's history. When I was looking this up, there were so many different articles of people who'd done studies of this when I was on Google Scholar. I'll include the first 3 pages to show you just how significant this moment was and how studied it actually is. It's pretty interesting how many studies were made off of this particular event and how many internet precedential moments actually came from it. But let's go back into it. At the time of its removal, the subreddit had over 150,000 subscribers and was dedicated to mocking and harassing overweight individuals. The ban marked a major turning point in Reddit's governance, shifting the platform away from an unmoderated free speech stance towards enforceable community standards and anti-harassment policies. While fat people hate had drawn intense criticism for years due to its hostile content, Reddit admins explicitly stated that the ban was triggered by targeted harassment and off-platform abuse rather than offensive opinions alone. Users and moderators of Fat People Hate actively posted images of personal identification details, doxing, and targeted harassment at specific individuals off-site. The IMGUR incident. IMGUR, then Reddit's primary image hosting host, began removing image links hosted on FPH that targeted private individuals. In retaliation, Fat People Hate moderators placed photos and personal details of the IMGUR staff on their subreddit sidebar and header, urging users to harass them. This directly violated Reddit's newly instituted anti-harassment policy, forcing site administrators to step in. The nameless one was doxed. Their information was shared. Their nudes that they had posted in multiple fat subreddits voluntarily were leaked to people outside of the places where she had consensually shared that material. I am sorry that happened to her, and it is absolutely terrible. What this was not was a coordinated event made by one person. It was a conglomeration of many different people world over who just really, really intensely hated fat women for the reason that they are fat and exist on the internet. Very different for the reason that Gore World exists, which is a bunch of people going into a lot of the characteristics like I am doing. My biggest problem with this person is not at all their weight, but rather how they throw it around. This was not something that was done to just the nameless one. And when the subreddit disbanded, a lot of that targeted attention was lost. Some went to 4chan, some went to 8chan, which isn't really here anymore. I tried to look up the thread for the nameless one. Basically, that's where QAnon was formed. I'm pretty sure they had a lot of different interests, and it's been over a decade, and 4chan's very looks-maxy, and they just different strokes for different folks.
They got disbanded in, I think, 2015, if not 2016 for sure. Like, Reddit had to intervene and completely remove the subreddit. Before they did, though, they had done a really good job of ruining my life. So it all started on the positive subreddits at first. They have ones for like BBW, SSBBW, just different like fat people, like amateur porn stuff, just like posting nudes or whatever. So I started posting on there, just like nothing like too crazy, just like photos of myself and stuff. And then I was really young at the time, so I was getting a lot of positive attention. And I actually met 2 people during this time that are very pivotal to the story. One is the stalker, and the other is the person who I thought was the love of my life. They were both in my life for about the same amount of time because I'm a victim of a narcissistic sociopath. He stalked me for a total of 8 years. We met around this time. I think that was his first attack on me. He led. Okay. He led the gang stalking.
As usual, the nameless one is using terms she does not understand. Gang stalking is a persecutory belief system in which an individual believes they are being systematically surveilled, stalked, and psychologically harassed by a large coordinated group of people, community members, or covert organizations. Those who identify as targeted individuals often describe experiencing subtle, synchronized harassment tactics such as physical tailing, noise campaigns, or repeated ambient behaviors meant to cause distress. It does not, in fact, mean that one is being stalked by a gang.
a lot of women were targeted on r/fat people hate. Like a lot of us, like back when I first created my Instagram, like I posted my first ever selfie of me leaving the house in a tank top for the first time after leaving Mormonism. So back on the gang stalking topic, because I didn't really kind of glaze over that with the r/fat people hate, they posted me like one time I was posted 7 times on the top 25 of the week for that subreddit. So like pretty much every time I posted, there were people posting, making fun of me. I think some people found me like really irritating just because I was loud and vocal, and a lot of these places like r/fat people hate, the LOL Cal sites, Kiwi Farms. There's all these different sites that are like dedicated hate forums essentially.
So the nameless one claims to have been gang stalked across multiple platforms, naming Kiwi Farms as one of them. I just want to quickly show you something. Her page started in 2015 and to date has 49 entries. As you can see here, the next page has posts from 2015. And over here we have the first post from the third page, which was posted in 2023. It took 8 years for the next post in this person's farms thread to be made. Now let's compare her to her colleagues. As you can see over here, Amber's page started in 2016, a year later than the nameless ones did, and it to date has 4,676 pages. Over here, we have Foodie Beauty's page, which was started 2 years after the nameless one's page was started, and it has 11,197 pages to date. My point is simple. Somebody who couldn't even get 50 pages on a farm's thread in 11 years is not interesting enough to have been given the kind of attention she claims she was given. If you look at Amber and Foodie Beauty, like I've shown you, they are far more interesting to the public than the nameless one, and this is shown by the sheer attention they were able to garner without going into the DMs of multiple all-world reactors begging for them to watch their content. I find it hard to believe that some mastermind stalker hacker was able to rally hundreds of people across different hate forums to attack the nameless one when they couldn't even get more than 4 posts in an 8-year period. There was no coordinated attack on her. She was just one of thousands of people who were doxed and attacked in that thread. Her thread was open, somebody was introducing her, and on the second page, somebody said she's just not interesting enough. Now, are you telling me that somebody who has been labeled just not interesting enough was gang stalked by multiple people across multiple platforms? That didn't happen. Also, gang stalking is not what she thinks it is. The reason I have labeled this picture with the heroic martyr paradox is because that is why the stalker exists. When I was watching the previous video that I made, the video it comes from, I realized that I had missed the fact that she had thrown in the stalker. So when I read that, it reminded me of something she had said in the podcast, which were the clips included in the beginning, and now I'm going to take you into why she made up the stalker to begin with. I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. I know you're going to. Thank you so much for all the support that I've been getting. Thank you so much to the people who have contributed to my PayPal. Thank you so much to the people who have joined my Patreon. You guys are amazing. I hope that you guys will enjoy this video because it is dedicated and sponsored by you. Okay, let's get into it.
The creature. What is it?
It's a being so terrifying it's impossible to even describe. It is the Nameless One.
Disgusting!
I believe that the doxing event of our fat people hate gave the nameless one the kernel that they needed to facilitate a completely different narrative, that of her being targeted as an individual alone by a stalker. Okay, now that we have that history, I want us to look into the portion of dialogue that prompted this. The dialogue that we are now looking into comes from the same video. The video prior to this comes from, which is the nameless one sitting in a car reminiscing about the relationship that they had with a minor who was the child of somebody that they were in a relationship with. I was going to end it at a minor. That didn't really sound so great. So when I was rewatching the video, I heard something And I was like, oh, shoot, I missed it. She brought up the stalker again. When there's a stalker, there's a real huge lie inside of it, because the stalker exists to facilitate her being an ultimate victim so that she doesn't have to take accountability for something. And that's when I had to cross-reference things with the stalker, hence the We're All Insane podcast, Our Fat People Hate.
There was a reason why when I was going through the doxing stuff and people were ripping my life apart and posting other people's information that were tied to me online, that I had to delete my first Instagram account. His family found out, and they were funding the custody battle, and the lawyers said that at that point I had become a liability for the stability of the case, and we had two options. We could either break up, or I could get off the internet entirely. I used to say all the time, like, I picked my relationship, but I didn't just pick my relationship. I picked them. I picked both of them over the internet. And I would do it again. It was heartbreaking and hard, and it put me into severe depression. But, and it took me about 5 years to actually return to the internet. So 6 months later, like, I made a new account, and I kept promising to come back and post, but I was just so traumatized by all of that happened, and I was so scared that they could get hurt again, that the same situation could arise again. Not knowing fully at the time that the stalker I talked about in those interviews was the one fueling the doxing and everything. It's just crazy how that happened, and how in the end it really did attribute to the final fracturing of everything involved. Losing them, losing the thing that made me as close to a mother as I've ever been.
And now I'm going to read you the statement that made my ear itch. There was a reason why, when I was going through the doxing stuff and people were ripping my life apart and posting other people's information tied to me online, that I had to delete my first Instagram account. His family found out, and they were funding the custody battle. The lawyers said that at that point, I had become a liability for the stability of the case. And we had two options. We could either break up, or I could get off the internet entirely. I used to say all the time, like, I picked my relationship. But I didn't just pick my relationship. I picked them. I picked both of them over the internet. And I would do it again. It was heartbreaking and hard, and it put me in a severe depression. And it took me about 5 years to actually return to the internet. 6 months later, I made a new account and kept promising to come back and post, but I was just so traumatized by all of that. Wait, huh? Let's go back. And it took me about 5 years to actually return to the internet. Next line. 6 months later, I made a new account. You get where I'm going with this, right? She's such a liar that she literally just lied in the same breath. She said 5 years, and then she caught herself because she knew that if somebody went and checked 5 years, they would have found that she was on the internet posting somewhere. So she had to retract it and then be like, oh, she did make an Instagram account 6 months later, but she was hardly posting on it. In that way, trying to cover herself up. She's a fucking liar. I was so traumatized by all of that, and I was so scared that they could get hurt again, or that the same situation could arise again. Okay, so whenever you have a narrative where the nameless one is trying to frame themselves as though they have made some sort of supreme sacrifice or gone through some supreme trauma, there's a pattern. There is victimization and empowerment. Victimization and empowerment. But you know what there never is between the victimization and the empowerment? Character developing experiences that would justify the shift from victim to victor that fast. But you will never get any sort of narrative that would show you the sort of montage where the person actually gets the skill they need. That never occurs. The nameless one just snaps between different roles. Why is that? Well, see, she speaks like she's writing a novel, but it's a very bad novel, again, because why? It lacks character development. So it's hard for you to believe that this person has actually overcome what they say they've overcome. Stories like this, situations like this, have a name called the heroic martyr paradox. The heroic martyr paradox is a narrative and psychological defense mechanism where a person reframes an involuntary setback forced eviction, or defeat as a supreme voluntary act of self-sacrifice. In storytelling and in interpersonal manipulation, it allows an individual to maintain high moral ground and total agency precisely at the moment they're losing control. So, when I discovered this, because I could feel, here's the thing, usually I'm like, this feels like something. And when I feel like, this feels like something, I remember that, you know what? Chances are you're not really the first person to have an idea. So you should go looking for that idea. Because if there hasn't been that idea, then you can be the first person to write that idea and have your name on it. And lo and behold, I was right. There was an explanation for it. So it was the heroic martyr complex. And then I was like, in storytelling, because it said in storytelling and in interpersonal manipulation. I remembered an episode of American Dad where this exact paradox is used to write the story. So I just thought I would share the episode with you guys because it's one of my favorites. And if I'm spoiling it, So the episode is called Into the Woods. It's season 15, episode 5, or season 17, episode 5, depending on the platform/numbering system. If you want a streaming platform to watch it on, I don't know, I pirate shit like the goddamn millennial adult that I am. This is to everybody who pays for streaming services. Episode overview, the encounter. Stan and Roger stop at a sandwich shop where Stan runs into Tommy Schuler, an old middle school classmate. Stan becomes consumed with guilt because he distinctly remembers a Halloween night from their childhood when they were cornered by teenage bullies. In Stan's memory, he abandoned Tommy to save himself, leaving Tommy to get bullied and ultimately ruining his life. Consumed by his belief that he made Tommy a loser, Stan obsessively tries to fix Tommy's life, which only results in Stan accidentally burning down Tommy's sub shop and causing total chaos. When Stan tries to reenact the fateful Halloween night to help Tommy confront his past, Tommy finally snaps and sets the record straight. Tommy was actually the one who abandoned Stan. Stan was the victim who got beaten up, but his brain coped with the trauma and humiliation by completely swapping their roles in his memory. The episode ends with a running gag on this coping mechanism. When Francine abandoned Stan during a fight with those same bullies later on, Stan instantly rewrites the memory in his mind on the car ride home to make it seem like he abandoned her instead. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was very interesting for me. I'm learning so much making videos about the Nameless One because I really do try to put a lot of research into my videos about her. Because she's such a prolific liar, I need to make sure I bring receipts, because if I don't, she's just going to say that I'm making fun of her trauma, and I'm saying that she's giving us, along with her parents' trauma, with all these goddamn lies, she will not stop inventing. Anyway, let's continue. So, how the paradox works. The paradox lies in the contradiction between actual powerlessness and claimed ultimate authority. This is very evident in the We're All Insane podcast episode, because the story the Nameless One tells is of horrific terror by the Stalker, and then one day it just completely ends because she actually threatens to dox the Stalker. Immediate shift from powerlessness to ultimate authority and agency. The core dilemma: a person faces an embarrassing, forced, and inevitable negative outcome. For example, getting fired, being dumped, or being forced off social media by lawyers / suffering public backlash. The psychological conflict. Admitting they were forced out implies weakness, liability, or lack of control. Instead of admitting defeat, the storyteller claims they could have stayed or won, but chose to lose or walk away to save someone else. I didn't just pick the relationship. I picked them. See what I was smelling? See what I was smelling? Come on. My Nameless One lie instincts are on point, bro. On point. Let's go. In the transcript, this paradox appears when the Nameless One tells a story about a parent-teacher conference. She said, I remember going to my first parent-teacher conference with his parents, and I fractured my foot on the corner of their little step in the garage. I think one of their other family members actually had hurt their foot on the step once as well. So she claims that she was going to go to a parent-teacher conference with the grandparents, but couldn't go because she hurt her foot. In reality, she never would have gone to the parent-teacher conference with them because his parents hated her. They hated what she had done online, and she said herself that the parents were funding the custody case, and she says the lawyer said that she was a liability to the case, so she decided that she was going to go off the internet and make this grand sacrifice. But that's not the reality. In the same way, the reality is she didn't go to the parent-teacher conference because she isn't a parent. She's not a step-parent, and the grandparents wouldn't have invited her, or rather his parents wouldn't have invited her because they didn't like her. That never happened. So instead of saying, I wanted to go, but they wouldn't let me, she made up a story about how she injured her foot. So yes, that is what the hero-martyr paradox is. It is the very essence of the Nameless One's storytelling. So when you see it in a story she's telling, where she goes from powerlessness to immediate power, when she goes from what was me to boss chick in one go, and there's no character development, know that she's telling a lie. The stalker exists so that the Nameless One doesn't have to face the fact that doing sex work and posting nudes in multiple places online makes you somebody who most people do not want as a daughter-in-law. And it sucks, it fucking sucks, but that's the reality of it. It wasn't a stalker. It's life, it's reality. That's why she was so happy that Remy's mother loved her, because Remy's mother didn't care about the sex work element, and that's what she was so afraid of, because that's what happened with her ex's parents: the sex work, the weight, the unemployment, the annoying their grandchild, and just being terrible. They didn't like the Nameless One so much that they threatened to not fight his custody battle. They were funding it. Nameless One said it. Her ex's parents hated her so much, they threatened not to give her ex money to fight for custody for their granddaughter if he didn't stop it with her, if he didn't leave her. A stalker didn't tear apart their relationship. The parents who didn't like her and her did, because of her and her decisions. There is no stalker. The stalker exists so that she can continuously be a martyr and a hero. But the reality is she didn't go to the parent-teacher conference because she wasn't invited, not because she hurt her foot. The grandparents who threatened to pull funding from a custody case for their grandchild, those grandparents were going to go with her to a parent-teacher conference. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. It doesn't make sense, and there's nothing on this world that will ever make it make sense. And you want to know why? Because it's a lie. I don't know. Every time I expose a Nameless One lie, a fairy gets their wings. This statement is the one that started the script of this video, which was just going to be about this particular lie. But then I had to bring in the stalker thing because I realized that there was more dialogue related to the stalker and it became a bigger video. So let's look at the portion of the video that was supposed to be this video. Okay. So the statement that stuck out to me, am I really tiny ears? Newborns have bigger ears than mine. But I hear everything. The statement. The lawyers said that at that point, I had become a liability for the stability of the case. And we had two options. We could either break up or I could get off the internet entirely. Well, I said to myself, this don't sound good. This don't sound good. This doesn't sound like something that would happen in the law. Lawyers can't speak to. You know what? I'm gonna look it up because I live in an amazing era, okay, and I can just ask questions and they can give me answers from legitimate statutes in the American law, which is like my favorite kind of lie she tells. The law ones and the technology ones, because they're so easy to prove. Okay. No, this is like, this is like the wrestling move where you jump into that. That's what I'm feeling as I'm filming this. Okay. So, when evaluated strictly against established family law statutes, procedural rules, and evidentiary standards, the claim that lawyers or a family court issued a legal ultimatum forcing an unrepresented third party to delete her social media accounts collapses on legal grounds. Here is the objective legal proof disproving this claim. Before I get into the legal actual proof, after I found this out, I was disturbed, or rather enraged, by the fact that the Nameless One used the fact that they had nudes and all of this doxed, perhaps at the fact that they had done sex work before through Chatterbait, perhaps the reason that because those facts were leaked, she was somehow a liability to a custody case. The fact that I know that's not true made me angry because I was like, you're implying that people who have done sex work are such liabilities that they can't even be in relationships with other people without threatening the custody of their kids. That's disgusting, no? It feels disgusting to me. It's like, oh, that's what you think of people, that what people can't do. Because sex work isn't limited to what people think it is, which is like prostitution. Things like OnlyFans, even just like softcore work is sex work. There are a lot of stigmas surrounding it. And now this one is playing into the stigma. That's what she's doing. That's why it's so scummy to me. She's playing into the stigma that comes with sex work, but then she'll also victimize herself for having chosen to do sex work. and paints society as the problem for how they view sex workers. And then this is what she does with that perception. She monopolizes it to paint herself as a victim. Boo-hoo, shame on me. I can't go to parent-teacher conferences. I'm a liability to the case. But also she's a hero because she got off the internet and chose her relationship. No, nay, chose the both of them. Wasn't on the internet for 5 years, except she was back in 6 months. Okay, now let's get to the legal facts. Number 1, lack of personal jurisdiction over non-parties. Family courts only exercise jurisdiction over the named litigants, the biological/legal parents or legal guardians of the minor child. A live-in partner or dating partner who has not established legal guardianship is a non-party to the litigation. Neither a family court judge nor the attorneys involved possess the legal authority or personal jurisdiction to issue binding mandates regarding a non-party's private employment, social media usage, or internet presence. Now, let's go to the statutory scope of remedies. Under the BIOC standard, court decisions are governed strictly by the best interest of the child standard. Example, Nebraska Revised Statutes 42 to 364. When a court identifies a third-party environmental or security risk, tensed up. Statutory remedies are strictly limited to controlling the litigant's household and parenting time, not regulating the third party directly. If a third party's online presence or alleged stalker pose a genuine threat to a custody case, the court's legal remedies are strictly restricted to restricting parent time, ordering that the child may not be in the physical presence of the third party during custodial events, protective/restraining orders, issuing formal injunctions regarding contact with the minor. Specific digital injunctions, restricting the parent from allowing photos, videos, or details of the minor child to be posted online. Legal authority limit. Family courts do not possess statutory authority under state family codes to order a non-party to delete personal or professional social media accounts. Now, let's get to the rules of professional conduct and attorney authority. The legal fact. Under ethical rules governing legal practice, example, ABA Model Rules of Professional Conduct, Rules 1.2 and 4.3, an attorney represents their client exclusively. Attorneys have no legal authority to issue binding mandates, legal ultimatums, or directives to an unrepresented third party. An attorney cannot enforce options on a non-party. They can only advise their own client on litigation strategy. Now, this could be a place where the nameless one could wiggle her way through and be like, yeah, but the family was advised to, so that's how I got to it. No, and we shall see why a lawyer would not give this kind of advice to a client. Let's get to the requirement of admissible evidence and formal court filings. For a third party's conduct or security situation to legally impact a custody decree or temporary order, the issue must be formally entered into the court record through admissible evidence. Formal motions. The opposing parent's attorney must file specific written pleadings, example, a motion for protective order or a motion to modify temporary custody. Evidentiary threshold. Allegations of safety risks require concrete documentation. For example, police reports, sworn affidavits, or guardian ad litem evaluation reports. Unsubstantiated claims or informal attorney statements do not carry legal weight in custody determinations without formal filings. So to summarize, we're going to go claim to legal reality. Claim. Lawyers gave me an ultimatum to delete my accounts. Reality. Attorneys have no legal authority or jurisdiction over unrepresented non-parties. Claim. I became a liability in court. Reality. A non-party's social media cannot be regulated by a family court judge. Only the parent's contact/custody rules can be restricted. Then there's the court case forced my internet exit. The whole idea here is, in order for the nameless one to be a hero over here, she gave up her internet presence so that she could be less of a liability, so that her ex could win custody of his child. Except this is a non-issue because a lawyer would never advise their clients of this, because this would never be a problem to begin with. This would only come up if the other lawyer had filed motions, if they had done all of these other things, which are very unlikely. This did not happen. Court remedies under the BIOC standards restrict parenting time or third-party exposure to the child, not a third party's independent online presence. So, Where does this leave us? Where does the stalker come into play? Come on, kids, follow Hari. Speaking of follow, you can follow me on nothing, bitch. I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter. I care about my mental health. And if you think my black female South African ass is going to be somewhere where I am giving Elon Musk money, you can go yourself in the with it. Well, guys, this brings us back to the hero and martyr complex. The truth is, the Nameless One's ex's parents didn't like her. They didn't like her because she did all of this shit online. She has a terrible reputation. She has done sex work. They just didn't like her. She's a piece of shit person. When she went to live there, she didn't have a job, so he was taking care of her. And she says she gave up her internet presence, even though she's chronically online. She could not give up an internet presence for 5 years, let alone 6 months, like she claims. But Stalker, let's get back to Stalker. Towards the end, when she's getting all sad about the end of the relationship, she says, not knowing fully at the time that the stalker I talked about in those interviews was the one fueling the doxing and everything. It's just crazy how all that happened and how in the end it really did attribute to the final fracturing of everything involved. Is it the Nameless One's fault that the relationship devolved? No. Is it the Nameless One's fault that it was so easy for people to get those pictures because they had posted them countless times in many subreddits, that was a choice that they made, knowing that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy on the internet? For a second, and for just a quick second, let's step back. Remember the web rape that the Nameless One claims happened. If you're not familiar, the Nameless One said that they were web raped. And in this web rape, what happened was the stalker forced her to do stuff on her webcam for him. She also says earlier in the interview that the stalker was one of her clients on Chatterbait, where people paid her money to do things on camera with them. He paid for it, and then he did it again. And we know he didn't do it because the technological things that she was describing didn't happen. The stalker didn't drive the doxing. People were doxing because it was a thing that was happening in that subreddit. And hundreds of other people were affected by such doxings, which is why it literally changed the landscape of Reddit forever. Forever. That's how big what happened was. But it happened like that, and they were able to achieve change on a policy level, not because it was happening targeted to like a couple of individuals or somebody like the Nameless One. When the group disbanded, that kind of targeted hate towards those specific people in the way that it was happening started to grow a little bit smaller. Less people moved to other platforms. How do I know this? Because there are studies made on it. I didn't read them. But I did read the abstract of a couple. I just realized that my video wasn't going in a direction I was going to focus on that too much. But my point is, it was a really big event that did affect a lot of people. But from this event, from being publicly doxxed, from having all of this happen, she invented the narrative of a stalker. And what the stalker did is the stalker gave her a scapegoat for anything bad in her life for those 8 years. I find it very suspicious that the stalker and her boyfriend entered her life at the same period, ex-boyfriend, and her stalker and her ex-boyfriend exited her life in the same 8-year period. She met both on Chatterbait. She claims to have had feelings for both. But only one of those people is real. The other one is a scapegoat, so that she can always be a martyr and a hero at the same time, so that she can have a justification for her delusion that she's experiencing of gang stalking. The stalker does not exist, but I'm going to read this again. Not knowing fully at the time that the stalker I talked about in those interviews, because she was doing a press run. She talked about the stalker in the Take 5 article. She talked about the stalker in the We're All Insane podcast. She talked about the stalker in other podcasts that I have not watched yet. But she kept on going with the story of the stalker and made herself a hero. Okay, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you to everybody's support. I am trying to raise $1,000. Well, not $1,000 anymore. I am trying to raise $947 so that I can pay for my registration fees. If you can donate to my PayPal, I will appreciate that very much. Join my Patreon. That's another way to support me. But if you can't do either of those things, thank you so much, because watching this video has literally put me in a position where next time I don't ever have to try and raise money because I will be monetized. Bitch. Anyway, thank you guys so much.